Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and today we're talking about CoX. So Jagex recently had a couple different proposals on potential changes for the Chambers of Xeric, and we actually already voted on these proposals, and they're coming into the game. We have voted yes for everything. First of all, it started with a post about potentially changing scouting. At the moment, Chambers of Xeric, you want to scout for a raid because not every room is really worth doing. So in general, you keep going in and out of the raid to try to find one that you like to do. Compare that to Theater of Blood and Tombs of Amascut, where you get to just go in, like you don't have to scout for one. Clearly, that's not the best design on Chambers of Xeric's end. In general, though, a better option than giving us just free scouting and everybody skipping certain rooms is to rebalance those rooms to make them actually worth doing, and that's what we're attempting to do here. So again, all of this stuff has actually been voted in. I'm currently going over the blog post that it'll word it a little bit more like we're still voting on it. All of this stuff has already passed. Look, I'm not sponsored by Monster, but I'd be willing, Monster. I'd drink uranium if whoever owned uranium would sponsor me. First of all, they're going to add some energy pools throughout the raid. This is a reasonable one. You have to use a lot of stamina potions during the raid, especially during boss fights, which that makes a lot more sense, having to use a stamina during a boss fight. But also, the raid is massive, so there's a lot of running around. There's only 2 energy pools. It's kind of dumb to have to waste stamina potions or to walk around half the raid and really just waste time. They're also going to speed up the growth of all the herbs, which is convenient even if nobody accidentally cleared something too early. Just in general, a little bit of time saved. They're going to adjust supply drops a little bit, letting all non-irons see supply drops from bosses if another non-iron dealt the most damage. In other words, right now, if you deal the most damage and you don't have enough space to pick up the stuff, you have to like drop some other stuff, pick up the potions, drop those potions for somebody else to pick up, or like trade them to them. In fact, you won't have to trade any potions anymore because also they're going to set it up so that regular supplies will just appear immediately. So basically, if you have Cerato and Brews or Super Restores or something that you want to give to your teammate, you'll be able to just drop them on the ground and your teammate can pick them up right away, saving a couple of seconds. Moving on to some scavenger updates. First of all, they're going to make scavengers always drop 2 Sicily, 4 Stinkhorn Mushroom, and 8 Endarkened Juice on death, rather than just dropping random secondaries. This one's actually pretty sick. So they do mention here the downside is that you won't be able to just get like 40 Endarkened Juice at one time. If you're in a big group, that does mean that you have a certain minimum of scavengers now to get enough juice, but like, it's the worst part of the raid is getting screwed by RNG anywhere. If something takes too long because you're messing it up or it's just a long fight in general, that's fine, but like, just killing scavengers over and over and over again because you can't get any Stinkhorn Mushrooms, so frustrating. Also, we're making planks stackable, which is pretty convenient, taking up a lot less inventory space, and they're looking to speed up the mining and the woodcutting shortcuts to bring them a little more in line with the boulder shortcut. It is very true at the moment that the boulder's like the only one that's really worth doing. It's nice to get a few extra points for the raid, but based off how long it takes and how many points you get, for the most part, the most efficient raid is like going through the raid as fast as possible and getting to Ulm, and dealing with the mining and the woodcutting spot isn't worth it at the moment, so it makes sense to shave a little bit of time off of it. We got one simple Tecton change here: reduce the defensive capabilities of Tecton in both regular and challenge mode raids. So they're not going to do all 4 of these bullet points here, but they could potentially change the Elder Maul so that when you hit Tecton with the Elder Maul, it reduces his defense by 5%. So 7 Elder Maul hits would be a little bit better than 1 Dragon Warhammer spec, which is pretty sick. This would in general make the Elder Maul more worth it, which is nice. It's clearly the worst of the 3 mega rare drops from this raid. It could make it so that the first Dragon Warhammer is guaranteed to hits. They could just straight up lower his crush defense in the enraged phase, or also prevents his defense from resetting at the anvil. I do like the Elder Maul one in there. I like having the Elder Maul be a little bit more value, but just in general, lowering Tecton's defense a little bit would be kind of nice. I don't mind even if the room took longer. If they added more health to him, that would add more points to the room. I understand that there's a little bit different balance there, but just in general, I don't mind if the room doesn't take too long. That's not necessarily the issue, as opposed to like just hitting zeros is boring. If the room took as long as it takes, but you don't hit zeros, he just has a lot of health and it took a while, way more fun than hitting zeros. That's the worst. Well, I think not getting like the mushrooms from scavengers was also the worst. I don't know. They're changing it. It's not the worst anymore. Next, we have some crab changes. Prevent splashing on crabs. This makes sense. Having to splash a magic magic attack on crabs and not turning it blue. That's just kind of stoop. And then also removing the attack delay after hitting a crab. This is actually a pretty cool one too. So if you're soloing a raid, usually when you get in the crab room, it's kind of good to just put on your blowpipe and try to tag as many crabs as possible and get them set up as quick as possible. And that's because the blowpipe is a fast weapon, or whatever the fastest weapon you have on you is. And in this case, like, you could use a twisted bow and just one tick each of the crabs, which is convenient. Some Ice Demon changes. They're going to make the kindling stackable. Yeah, this is similar to the planks. It's just going to be less banking. Overall, having to deal with the bank and deal with your envy space, that is part of the raid, especially when Raids 1 first came out. That was kind of a big deal, is like the whole idea is having to, you're kind of doing all of your PVM, including your bank trips, during one raid, which that is part of the raid, having to deal with that time. Realistically, when you think of how long the raid takes, like how much time you're spending on stuff, like why do we want to spend more time in the bank interface if we could spend time fighting the bosses? They are looking to reduce the Ice Demon's magic defense. It'll make those fire spells a little bit better. I do like the idea that fire spells are pretty thick against the Ice Demon, so making them work even better would be kind of nice. But what I really like here is that they're going to add herb lore secondaries. You'll be able to get the Endarkened Juice, the Stinkhorn Mushrooms, and the Sicily in significant quantities as a drop from Ice Demon. That's actually very convenient. We don't have any other way to get those secondaries other than scavengers. So getting them from a boss does make this room a lot more valuable to do. So you would be less likely to skip the Ice Demon in a scouting situation because that's kind of convenient. Thieving Room. I don't really like Thieving Room. I mean, I'm not hating. I enjoy the raid overall, but Thieving Room is probably like the most boring room. But check this out. They're going to make grubs stackable up to 28, same as with the kindling and with the planks, just convenient, but also guarantee a minimum of 1 grub obtained on a successful chest open with the aim of speeding up the room. That is one of the main reasons that the room is not so great. It takes a little bit too long for not being that many points and overall being pretty boring. Again, I really don't mind if the room is kind of long, if we're actually like playing the game and we're fighting something, we're raiding, you know what I mean? So making the room a little bit faster. Also, it is, again, like RNG screwing you is one of the most frustrating things that can happen. So just opening up chest after chest after chest, no grubs, annoying. So that's awesome. I like those changes. Vanguards, they only have 1 change for this. They're going to adjust the supply drops offered by Vanguards. In other words, they're going to make them more consistent. Vanguards are actually a phenomenal room, especially if you're trying to no prep at all. Being able to do Vanguards pretty much gives you all the potions you're going to need. And in this case, they're going to make it so that you know exactly what potions you get instead of, again, hoping for a little bit of RNG. It sucks if you go through a whole raid and then you just happen to not get the potions you expected to, and now you're in kind of a bad situation. Vasa Mysterio, my boy. They're going to add a guaranteed overload drop to Vasa, which is pretty thick. In general, getting an overload from a boss is way more convenient than having to make one. It takes less time, and you can get an overload like first. If you had Vasa as the very first room in the raid, for instance, now you already have an overload for like the rest of the monsters. Everybody's trying to make an overload for Olm, of course, but having an overload during the rooms before Olm can speed that up significantly. And they're also looking to adjust Vasa's defensive capabilities. Just like with Tecton, they may not do both of these things. They're either just going to straight up reduce the range defense of both the challenge mode and the regular, or they might adjust the healing mechanic on the crystal. I think that's pretty interesting, so that only if you don't destroy the crystal and he walks away early, that's when it would heal him. Overall, I don't have too much of a problem with Vasa Mysterio, but there is a little bit more of a DPS check in this room because he does a lot of healing while you're stuck on the crystal, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with that. The muted aisles, bro. Reduced variance of chopping the meat tree, Dimitri, and muted... I had to actually say Dimitri out loud to understand. I'm like, why would they name the meat tree Dimitri? Oh. So in this case, they just want to make it more consistent how much damage you would do to the tree. So at the moment, you do between 0 and your woodcutting level. Instead, they would shrink it down, kind of like how an Osmumten's Fang reduces your minimum hit and lowers your maximum hit just to make it kind of more consistent. This one I love, dude. Remove the muted aisle's damage immunity when eating the tree. This includes immunity gained when you freeze the muted aisle just before he eats the tree, bro. Again, it's just kind of boring to hit zeros, so I'd rather do damage. That's fun. Plus, muted aisle room can be a tough room to survive sometimes because they do a lot of damage, so being able to kill them faster means you take less damage. You know what also means you take less damage? Reduce the damage taken by players at mutadiles. Another one that they have a couple ways to go about this. They might reduce the attack speed, lower the max hit, basically reduce chip damage. But also, this one's interesting. Make the mutadiles attacks more predictable. For example, only letting them change after a certain amount of attacks in the previous style. Overall, I do kind of like the mechanic a little bit better when something is a little more predictable. If you know the boss better and you learn the boss, you should be rewarded and be able to benefit from that by having a good understanding and like taking less damage because you know what attack is coming next. But it's also fair that, I mean, to be fair, he does chip damage. I don't think the boss should just have to do 0 damage though. It's like if you learn the boss, like Hydra for instance, you really don't take any damage. I don't mind Hydra. I'm not trying to shit talk that boss. But in general, like for a high level boss, if you can just straight up take 0 damage the entire fight, not really a high level boss. Mutadile does have a lot of chip damage though, so being able to make sure that you're always protecting from the right attack style and you're only taking chip damage would be pretty significant for the room. On to Vespula. First of all, they're going to give Vespula the guaranteed overload drop, which is pretty solid. Same thing with Vasa and Asterio. Giving the overload drops just convenient for the run. Also, they're looking to tweak the redemption method. This is brilliant right here. We asked 100 raiders how to do Vespula without using redemption. 76 said they didn't know. 22 said they had never seen Vespula and added that their mentor won't let them into the crab room. And 2 of them said they knew how, but were probably lying. The redemption method at Vespula is so much more convenient than actually using the mechanics of the room that I remember when I was making my raids guide, one of the last things I had to do was like, I wanted to at least put in the guide, like, here's how you would do like a 3-man team, like Chambies, and actually like pick the grubs and deal with that and whatnot. But realistically, like it's redemption method. If you're not using redemption, you don't know how to do Vespula, apparently. Ultimately, we'd like to make some adjustments to Vespula that might make taking it on in a more conventional sense feel a little better, but also add a little leniency to the current redemption method. They could do that by reducing the damage from Vespula's regular attack / poison, reduce the speed at which the soldiers heal the portal, or increase the time taken for the soldiers to grow. I kind of like that last one. A little bit longer soldiers, like when the soldiers spawn, dude, the room's over. It's Jover, dude. So I really wouldn't mind if those take a little bit longer to grow. For the most part, reducing the damage wouldn't be too bad. I don't really mind where the redemption method is at currently, but I'm interested to see exactly which of these things they do. Again, these all already passed. So if we look at right here, here is the final vote on this poll. Like it says, should we tweak Vespula's room mechanics without impacting the redemption method as described in the blog? So they did give players an option for that survey to give more information on what they would like out of the Vespula room. I'm interested to see exactly where they are going with that. Finally, we have the Great Olm. Only 2 simple changes. First of all, add a cooldown between healing pools during his final phase. Oh my god, yes. Bro, the pools. I like the mechanic in general. I think having a healing mechanic, like the boss being able to heal itself, but you being able to stop him from healing himself, I like that mechanic. When he just back to back to back to back pulls, it just keeps going sometimes and it's a little rough. Limit the distance away from a player at which a portal can spawn during Olm's portal spec when soloing. So at the moment, if you solo Olm and he uses that teleport attack, it just puts a random teleport in the room that you have to run to. It can be very difficult. The best way to be doing solo Olm, you're generally never having to deal with that attack, but then if you do suddenly have to deal with it, it can be a lot of unavoidable damage. It is pretty annoying when that happens, but overall, just more of a nuisance. So that is a convenient one, but not necessarily game-changing. And that is it. That is the end of the blog post. All of those things have passed. They are going to be changing up the Chambers of Xeric very soon. I don't know exactly when this is going to happen. I imagine that they are trying to get it in before leagues, though. Having it change like in the middle of leagues seems kind of strange, and waiting a couple of months until after leagues also makes less sense. So I feel like we might be seeing these changes soon. I don't know if they actually announced a date for that already. Maybe I missed it. I do like all of these changes. I do have a Chambers of Xeric guide that is like a 1.5 years old that clearly doesn't have any of this information in it because this is new stuff. So I might have to look into updating that guide, huh? It does give me an excuse to knock out a solo Olm guide too, because I never wrapped that up. So I'm happy with Jagex knocking out some Chambers of Xeric changes, also giving me a little more initiative on some of my Chambers of Xeric gains. Raids are sick content in general, and Chambers of Xeric had a little bit like lackluster parts to it, mostly because it was the first raid. The other 2 raids, they designed those already having done some work with Raids Life, so they just keep getting better at it, and that means that Chambers of Xeric was falling behind. So these changes are going to be sick. That's it, everybody. If you enjoyed the video or just got some useful information, be sure to click that like button and also subscribe for more content. I do stream on Twitch, which hopefully is linked on the screen somewhere and in the description. Thank you for watching, and best of luck on your Chambers of Xeric grind.